Samuel Harris never expected that the quiet isolation of his old farmhouse would be broken by a frantic knock during a violent storm. But that evening, as thunder roared across the sky and rain battered the windows like tiny fists, that knock came. He had just set down a modest dinner of reheated stew and a slice of bread, the same meal he had prepared for himself most nights since his wife Eleanor had passed 3 years prior. At 62, Samuel was used to the stillness, the absence of another voice in the house. The silence had become a companion, broken only by the occasional groan of aging wood or the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. The knock came again, louder, more urgent. Samuel rose, sighed heavily, and walked to the door. As he moved across the room, the floorboards creaked under his steps. He grabbed the flashlight from the side table by the entryway. When he opened the door, the beam caught a figure standing on the porch, drenched and trembling. She looked barely older than 25. Her soaked hair clung to her face, and her clothes were plastered to her skin. But it was her belly that drew his attention. Round and unmistakably full. She was at least 8 months pregnant. "Please," she said, her voice thin against the howl of wind. "My car broke down, about half a mile back. I did not know where else to go." Samuel hesitated for only a moment. "Come inside," he said, stepping back. "You will catch your death out there." She stumbled into the hallway, leaving a pool of water on the worn welcome mat. Up close, he could see how exhausted she looked. Her eyes were heavy, and her face pale. "I'm Emily Dawson," she said, her teeth chattering. "I'm so sorry to intrude." "Samuel Harris," he replied. "Let's get you out of those wet clothes first. You can explain later." He led her into the living room where the fire in the hearth still glowed. The room looked almost untouched since Eleanor's passing. Same faded couch, same patterned afghan draped over the rocking chair, same family photographs on the mantel. "Wait here," Samuel said. "I'll find you something dry." He returned moments later with a flannel shirt and drawstring sweatpants. "These were my wife's," he said, a little gruff. "Should fit over things." He gestured toward her belly. "Thank you," Emily murmured, clutching the clothes with chilled fingers. "Is there a place I can change?" Samuel pointed to the downstairs bathroom. As she stepped away, he returned to the kitchen and poured a cup of hot tea. When she came back, the clothes hung loose around her frame, except where they stretched across her stomach. But she looked a bit warmer and a bit less shaken. "The storm's not easing up," Samuel said as he handed her the steaming mug. "Phones are probably down too." Emily nodded as she wrapped her hands around the cup. "I was heading to my aunt's house in Fairbrook. The GPS sent me down this road, and then my car died. Smoke started coming from under the hood." Her voice wavered. "I did not think I would find anyone out here." "Been here all my life," Samuel said. "This land has been in my family since before my grandfather's time." Emily took a sip of the tea and then grimaced, her hand moving to her side. "You all right?" Samuel asked, a note of concern entering his voice. "Just a contraction," she said, trying to smile. "They've been coming and going all day, still pretty spaced out." Samuel rubbed his hand over his face. A storm, a stranger, a pregnant woman in labor. This was not how he expected his quiet night to go. "How far along are you?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. 9 months, she replied. "Due any day now." A particularly fierce gust rattled the windows. The lights flickered, and then went out entirely. "Perfect," Samuel muttered. In the flickering shadows cast by the fire, he moved to light candles from the stash he kept for emergencies. As he struck the first match, he caught a clear look at Emily. Her face, her posture, something about her. It stirred something deep in his memory, something he could not name. He told himself it was just her resemblance to Eleanor in her youth. But as the night wore on, Samuel would discover just how deeply connected they truly were, and how this storm was nothing compared to the one about to arrive within those four walls. With the candles lit and placed around the room, Samuel finally took a seat across from Emily. Her hair, now drying in loose waves, framed a face that looked both weary and strong. There was a calmness about her despite the exhaustion, a quiet determination that reminded him even more of Eleanor. The baby's father, Samuel found himself asking, though he instantly regretted the intrusion. "Is he not in the picture?" Emily answered quickly. "It is just me." Samuel gave a small nod. He knew better than to pry further. "People have their reasons," he said simply, "and sometimes that is all right. You should eat something," he added after a moment, motioning toward the kitchen. "There is stew on the table. It is nothing fancy, but it is hot." They sat together in the flickering glow of the candles, the storm still raging outside. Rain lashed at the windows and wind groaned against the walls, but inside there was warmth. Samuel watched Emily as she ate, slow and deliberate. Even in clothes too big for her, with the shadows under her eyes, she carried herself with quiet dignity. "Tell me about your aunt," he said gently, trying to distract both of them from the storm. "The one in Fairbrook." For a second, something flickered in Emily's eyes. "Truth is, I have never met her," she admitted. "My mother spoke of her before she passed last year, said if I ever needed help, I should try to find her." "And you need help now?" Samuel asked. Emily looked down at her belly, her fingers gently resting over it. "More than ever." Another contraction hit, and this time it seemed longer. She closed her eyes and breathed through it, wincing. Samuel checked his watch. That was 20 minutes since the last one. "Closer now." "What is your aunt's name?" he asked, trying to shift her focus. "Eleanor," Emily said, her breath evening out. "Eleanor Harris. That was her maiden name, I think. I do not know if she ever married." The spoon Samuel had been holding dropped to the table with a loud clatter. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice low. Emily looked up, startled. "Eleanor Harris," she repeated. "Is something wrong?" Samuel felt the world tilt. "Eleanor Harris was my wife." Emily stared at him, her wide eyes reflecting the candlelight. "You are Samuel?" He nodded slowly, mind racing. "Eleanor never had siblings. She was an only child." Emily leaned forward, urgency creeping into her voice. She had a sister. My mother. Her name was Caroline Dawson, born Caroline Harris. My mother never stopped talking about her sister, but she said they had a falling out a long time ago." Samuel shook his head in disbelief. "We were married 40 years. She would have told me if she had a sister." Emily's hand moved to her chest, and for the first time, Samuel noticed the silver locket around her neck. It was old, tarnished with time, but the design, a delicate heart with a small engraved flower, was unmistakable. Samuel's voice caught in his throat. He had seen that locket before, identical, in fact, to the one he had given Eleanor for their 20th anniversary. The very one she was buried with. "Where did you get that?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Emily looked down and touched the locket. "It was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died." With careful fingers, she opened the clasp. Inside was a faded photograph. 2 young women, arms wrapped around each other, laughing at the camera. One of them was undoubtedly a younger Eleanor. The other had the same eyes as Emily. "That is my mother," Emily said softly. Samuel sat back, the breath leaving his lungs in a rush. He could not find the words. It was as if he were seeing a ghost, not only of Eleanor, but of a life she had never spoken of. "She never told you, did she?" Emily asked gently. Before he could respond, a brilliant flash of lightning lit up the room, followed by a crash of thunder that rattled the windows. Emily gasped, her hands gripping her belly tightly. "That one was stronger," she said, grimacing. Samuel shook off the shock and focused. He knew that expression. He had seen it twice before, when Eleanor had brought their own children into the world. "How close now?" he asked, his voice firm again. Emily's breathing was shallow. "Maybe 15 minutes. The storm outside howled louder. The power was still out. Phones dead. The nearest hospital more than 30 miles away. And no way to get there." "I delivered both our children," Samuel said, standing. "And more calves than I care to count. If it comes to that—" Emily met his eyes. There was fear. Yes, but beneath it was trust. "I believe you." Those simple words struck Samuel with more force than the thunder outside. How could she believe in him so easily? And yet, if she was Eleanor's niece, then she was family. "Try to rest between contractions," he advised. "I will gather what we might need." As he moved through the dark house collecting towels, scissors, and thread, questions swirled in his mind. Why had Eleanor never mentioned her sister? What had driven them apart so completely? And most importantly, had Emily really stumbled here by chance? Or had she been looking for him all along? By the time Samuel returned to the living room, Emily was pacing slowly in front of the fire. One hand supported her lower back, and her other arm occasionally rested protectively over her belly. As he stepped into the room, the firelight caught her profile just right, and his breath caught in his throat. The resemblance to Eleanor was more than passing. It was undeniable. "Your contractions?" he asked, setting the supplies on the coffee table. "How often now?" "About 12 minutes, she replied, pausing mid-step. "But I think my water just broke." Samuel nodded. There would be no hospital tonight. This baby would be born here, in this house that had seen generations come into the world. "Tell me about my aunt," Emily said suddenly, as if sensing his thoughts. "What was she like?" Samuel settled into his old armchair, the one Eleanor had always insisted stayed by the fire. "Eleanor was steady," he said. "She could weather any storm and still have a smile left for you at the end." He paused, swallowing thickly. "She loved this land. She loved our children. She never once complained. Not about the hard years, not about the lean ones." "My mother was different," Emily said softly. "Always restless. Always chasing something just beyond her reach." Another contraction hit, and Emily braced herself against the back of the couch, her knuckles white with strain. Samuel checked his watch. 10 minutes now, he said. "What happened between them?" he asked when Emily could speak again. "Why didn't Eleanor ever tell me about her?" Emily shook her head slowly. "My mother never said exactly. Just that they argued when they were young. Words were spoken, words that could not be taken back." Her eyes lifted to meet his. She regretted it, especially toward the end. "She made me promise I would find her sister. To make it right." "Eleanor passed 3 years ago," Samuel said gently. "A heart attack. It was quick, at least." Emily's face crumpled with emotion. "Then I am too late." "Maybe not entirely," Samuel said. "She left me behind. 2 children, though they are grown and far away now. And grandchildren. Which makes them your cousins, I suppose." Thunder rolled overhead again, louder now, and the windows rattled in their frames. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, something had shifted. The tension between them had been replaced with a quiet understanding. The next few hours blurred into a steady rhythm of preparation and pain. Samuel moved the furniture, laid out clean sheets, and added more wood to the fire. Emily's contractions grew stronger and more frequent. They spoke quietly between the pain. About Eleanor, about Caroline, about all the missed years and unspoken words. "I was going to name the baby Eleanor if it is a girl," Emily said during one of the breaks. "After the aunt I never met." Samuel felt something inside him break open. It was a part of him he had sealed away after Eleanor died. "She would have liked that," he said. As midnight approached, the storm reached its peak. Rain lashed the windows, and the wind seemed determined to lift the roof from the house, But inside, a different kind of storm took hold. "It is time," Emily gasped, her voice tight with effort. "The baby is coming now?" Samuel nodded, rolling up his sleeves. He had helped deliver calves, foals, and had stood beside Eleanor for the birth of their own children. But that had been decades ago, and this time there was no Eleanor. Just him and Emily and the memory of a woman they had both loved in different ways. "You can do this," he told her. "Just listen to your body. Push when it tells you to." Emily nodded once, her focus fully on the pain and the moment. She gripped the sheets beneath her tightly, sweat beading on her forehead. Her breathing was sharp, shallow, controlled. What followed seemed both endless and over in a heartbeat. Emily's cries rose and fell with the wind outside. Samuel worked with a calm urgency, his hands steady, his mind clear. And then, in the silence between thunderclaps, a new sound filled the room. The thin, indignant wail of a newborn. "It is a girl," Samuel said, his voice thick as he wrapped the baby in a towel. "A beautiful baby girl." He placed her gently in Emily's arms, and in that instant, he saw it again, the look on her face. The same expression Eleanor had worn when she held their firstborn. Wonder, love, peace. "Margaret," Emily whispered, stroking the baby's cheek. Little Margaret. Outside, as if on cue, the storm began to recede. The wind quieted, the rain softened to a gentle patter. And inside, where grief had once filled every shadow, there was now the steady, quiet breathing of new life. By the time Samuel had cleared up and helped Emily into the guest bedroom to rest, the rain had settled into a soft, rhythmic patter against the roof. He placed a battery-powered lantern on the nightstand, then settled into the rocking chair beside the bed. Emily was already drifting into sleep, little Margaret tucked peacefully on her chest. In the soft light, Samuel could see it clearly now. The shape of Eleanor's jaw, the set of her mouth, the quiet strength in the curve of Emily's posture. The resemblance was unmistakable, now that he knew to look for it. How had he not seen it from the beginning? When dawn came, Samuel stepped onto the porch and surveyed the property. The storm had taken down several limbs from the old oak at the edge of the fields, and the driveway was dotted with puddles large enough to reflect the sky. But the house had held firm. It had stood against countless storms. This one had passed like the rest. When he returned inside, Emily was awake. She looked tired but peaceful as she fed Margaret with slow, steady care. "The phone lines should be working again soon," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "We should get you both checked by a doctor. Make sure everything is all right." Emily nodded, but hesitated. "Samuel, there is something else I need to tell you." He waited, heart tightening. "I did not just come here looking for Eleanor," she said. "I came looking for you." "Me?" Samuel frowned. "How did you even know about me?" Emily's fingers went to the locket she still wore. "My mother kept track of Eleanor from a distance. She knew about you, about your children. She never reached out, too proud, I think. But she never stopped caring. And you? Why now?" Emily looked down at the baby, then back at him. "Because I have nothing left. My mother is gone. The baby's father left when I told him I was pregnant. I lost my job, my home. This locket was the only thing of value I had. I could not bring myself to sell it." Samuel felt a familiar ache rising in his chest. The same one that had followed Eleanor's death. The same one that came when his children left the farm. A deep, hollow quiet that had made the house echo with absence. "You are not alone now," he said. "Not if you do not want to be." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "But you barely know me." "I knew Eleanor," Samuel replied, "and I see her in you. That is enough. You have a place here, if you want it, both of you." Sunlight pierced through the thinning clouds, casting warm golden beams across the hardwood floors. The storm had passed, and the house was full of breath and light again. Not as it had been before. Not a restoration, but a beginning. 6 months later, Samuel stood on the same porch, watching Emily hang fresh laundry on the line. Little Margaret lay nearby on a blanket, gurgling beneath the shade of a tree. She had grown fast. Her eyes Eleanor's blue, her hair Emily's dark waves. They had made a life here. Emily took care of the house and helped Samuel around the farm, which he had begun working again with surprising vigor. In the evenings, they sat together on the porch, trading stories about Eleanor and Caroline, trying to piece together the past while building something new. Samuel had reached out to his children, told them the strange story of how Emily and Margaret had come to the farm. They were skeptical at first, but one look at the locket, and one look at the child who bore Eleanor's eyes, and they came. Last month, they had all gathered for the first time in years. The house had echoed with laughter and children's footsteps. For the first time in a long time, it had felt like home again. As Emily lifted the final sheet onto the line, she glanced back and saw Samuel watching. She smiled, a small, quiet smile that had grown more confident each day. She was putting down roots, in the same soil that had held generations before her. "A penny for your thoughts," she called. Samuel shook his head and smiled, just thinking how Eleanor would have liked this, seeing family together again. Emily touched the locket. "I think she does see it," she said softly, "and I think she is happy." Margaret began to fuss, and Samuel stepped down from the porch to join them. The emptiness that had lingered in his heart for 3 years had not been replaced, but it had been answered. Not with noise, but with life. Not with memory, but with continuation. Sometimes, the fiercest storms carry the greatest gifts. And sometimes, the family we find can be just as precious as the family we are born into.